Hana stood at the edge of the observation platform, staring at the infinite darkness of space. The stars above her looked cold and distant, like tiny lights that did not care about the small problems of humans below them. Around her, the station hummed with its normal sounds, machines working, people talking, life continuing as it always did. But Hana heard none of it clearly. In her mind, there was only noise and confusion. She had been at the Orbital Defense Academy for 3 years now, training to become a pilot. 3 years of pushing her body to its limits, learning to control ships that could break apart if she made one small mistake, studying the movements of the Virillians who wanted to destroy everything humans had built here, 3 years of pressure that was becoming heavier each day. The Virillians had been attacking more frequently in the last few weeks. Not big attacks that would finish everything quickly, but small ones. A ship here, a test of the defenses there. They were probing, looking for weak spots, like a hunter testing the strength of its prey before the final strike. Everyone at the academy felt it. Everyone knew something bigger was coming. Hana had not slept properly in days. Her commanders told her she was one of the best pilots they had seen, but that only made things worse. If she was one of the best, and the Virillians kept getting closer, what hope did the others have? What hope did any of them have? She gripped the railing of the platform and took a long breath. Below her, far below, was the colony world that humans called New Sol. It was the first place humans had truly settled on an alien world, a place where people were building new homes, raising children, planning futures. The colony had grown from a small camp to a city with thousands of people. All of them depended on the academy, on pilots like her, to keep them safe. Hana closed her eyes. She thought about her sister, Minhai, who lived down in New Sol with her young son. She thought about what would happen if the Virillians succeeded in their invasion. She had seen the reports of what they did to worlds they conquered. It was not pretty. It was not quick. The sound of an alarm suddenly cut through the air, sharp and urgent. Hana's eyes snapped open. This was not a test alarm. She knew the difference between a test and a real emergency, and this was real. Red lights began flashing across the station. She could hear shouting in the distance, people running, doors closing automatically. Her training took over. She pulled up her personal communication device to see what was happening. The message was clear. Virillian interceptor approaching. Multiple ships detected entering the station's airspace. This was it. This was the big attack. Hana ran toward the nearest control room, pushing past other cadets and officers who were also running. The station felt like chaos suddenly. People were shouting orders, alarms were screaming, and everyone seemed to be moving in different directions at once. Through a window, Hana caught a glimpse of the sky above the station, and her heart fell. A massive ship was descending through the upper atmosphere. It was huge, far larger than the military ships humanity had. Its shape was wrong, alien, and the way it moved through the sky looked wrong too, as if it did not follow the same rules of physics as human ships. Behind it, smaller fighters moved like angry insects. The Virillians were not testing anymore. They were attacking for real. Hana knew she had to reach the escape pods. They were located on the lower levels of the station, and if she could get there, she might have a chance to survive. But the station was huge, and getting to the lower levels during an attack would be dangerous. She made a decision. She would not wait for orders. She would not follow the standard evacuation procedure. She ran to a secure room where the emergency descent suits were kept. These suits were designed for pilots who needed to leave a ship quickly in an emergency. They had small thrusters, enough oxygen for about 30 minutes, and heat shielding to protect against the high temperatures of re-entry. Hana pulled one of the suits from the wall and put it on quickly. Her hands were shaking, but she forced them to stay steady. She had trained for this moment many times, though she had never thought she would actually have to do it for real. She made her way to the outer platform of the station, moving through corridors that were quickly becoming empty as other people rushed toward the shelters. The station was starting to shake. She could hear the sounds of weapons being fired, the deep rumble of explosions in the distance. The Virillians were already inside the station. The outer door was sealed with an emergency lock, but Hana had the code. She entered it quickly and stepped out onto the external platform. The view took her breath away, even though she had seen the observation platform many times before. Below her, thousands of kilometers below, was the planet. The atmosphere glowed with colors, blues and greens and browns. Clouds moved slowly across its surface. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Hana looked up at the station above her and saw more Virillian ships approaching. She could not stay here. She activated her descent suit and checked the systems one final time. Everything was working. She had oxygen for 30 minutes. She had enough fuel in the thrusters to make a controlled descent to the lower atmosphere where the emergency pods were stationed. She jumped. The moment her feet left the platform, Hana felt the pull of gravity and the cold of space around her. She was falling toward the world below, her suit's thrusters firing to slow her descent. The station above her was getting smaller and smaller. The screams of the alarm had faded away. The only sound now was the rush of air as she entered the upper atmosphere, and the steady sound of her own breathing inside her suit. Hana did not know if she would survive this. She did not know if anyone would survive this. But as she fell through the darkness toward the distant lights of New Seoul, she knew one thing. She would not give up. She would fight to live, and if she lived, she would fight to protect her sister and her nephew and everyone else on that world below. She took a long breath and adjusted her descent trajectory. The planet was waiting for her. The fall had only just begun. Kaz had made a terrible choice. He understood this now as he fell through the cold darkness of space, his body spinning slowly and uncontrollably. The anti-gravity systems of his suit had been damaged during the fighting on the station, and there was nothing he could do to stop the fall. All he could do was plummet toward the planet below and hope that somehow he would survive the impact. He had been a soldier in the Virillian military for 8 years. He had followed orders without question, completed missions without hesitation, and believed that what his people were doing was right and necessary. The Virillians were expanding their territory, they said. They were taking worlds that belonged to them by ancient right, they claimed. Kaz had believed these things because soldiers are taught to believe them. But then he began to question. It started when he met some human prisoners during a campaign on another world. They were not monsters. They were not the evil creatures that Virillian propaganda showed on screens and in training videos. They were just people, scared and angry and hopeful, like anyone else. From that moment, something had changed inside him. He had started to communicate secretly with human resistance fighters, trying to understand them better, trying to find a way to stop the endless cycle of violence. His commanding officers had discovered his transmissions just hours ago. They had given him a choice: face execution for treason or leave immediately. He had chosen to run. Kaz had taken a small fighter ship and launched from the Virillian command vessel. He had flown toward the orbital station, hoping to disappear into the chaos and then somehow make contact with the humans on the colony world below. It was a desperate plan, probably foolish, but it was better than facing the execution ceremony that his people prepared for traitors. The human defenses had shot him down. Now he was falling, bleeding from a wound in his shoulder where shrapnel from the explosion had cut deep. His suit was damaged. His oxygen was leaking slowly but surely into the vacuum around him. He had maybe 20 minutes of consciousness left before the lack of oxygen would pull him under. He had maybe 5 minutes before his descent would bring him to the upper atmosphere of the planet, where the friction would burn his suit and his body if his systems could not compensate for the heat. This was not how he wanted to die. Kaz had imagined his death many times during his years as a soldier, but it was always with some meaning, some purpose. He had imagined falling in combat for what he believed in, or maybe being executed for his betrayal, so that others might know the truth about what he had done. But this was just an accident, a meaningless death in the emptiness of space. He thought about his family back on the Varillian homeworld. He thought about his sister, Nira, who had always understood him better than anyone else. He thought about the teacher he had studied under, who had taught him that questions were more important than answers. He thought about all the things he would never do, all the conversations he would never have. The darkness was pulling at him. His vision was becoming blurred at the edges. The oxygen alarm in his suit was sounding continuously now. He was so tired. If he just closed his eyes and let himself sleep, maybe the pain would go away. And then something hit him. The impact was sudden and violent. Kaz felt a sharp blow to his head, and then another to his body. For a moment, he could not understand what was happening. Was this death? Was this what it felt like when the body shut down? But no. Through his fading consciousness, he realized that something had hit him mid-air. Something had struck him hard enough to knock the air from his lungs, hard enough to make his vision flash with white light and pain. Hana had not seen what she was hitting. She was focused on her descent trajectory, watching the readings on her suit's display, making sure she was going to reach the coordinates where the emergency pods were waiting. Her mind was full of calculations and fear. Then suddenly something large collided with her from above. The impact was so unexpected that for a moment, Hana could not process what was happening. She felt something heavy slam into her, felt her trajectory change violently, felt the stabilizers in her suit straining against the new weight and the new forces pulling at her body. Her training kicked in immediately. Without thinking, without even processing what was happening, Hana reacted. She had been trained in combat since childhood. She had been taught how to respond to threats in any situation, how to move her body with precision and deadly accuracy. She struck upward with her elbow. The blow connected with something solid, something that felt like bone and muscle. She heard a sound, almost like a gasp, though it might have been the rush of air or the sound of her own blood pounding in her ears. She struck again, harder this time, a blow to what felt like a head, delivered with all the force her falling body could generate. She felt the impact travel through her arm, felt something give way under the force of her strike. Whatever had hit her went limp. Hana managed to catch the falling body before it pulled away from her. Her suit's stabilizers adjusted to the additional weight, burning through fuel faster but managing to keep her descent controlled. She looked down at the thing she was now holding, expecting to see a Varillian soldier with weapons and armor. What she saw instead was a figure very similar to her own shape. Humanoid. Wearing a damaged suit, bleeding from several wounds. The alien was unconscious, his head tilted back, his breathing shallow. Hana could see that she had hit him hard. Very hard. His face was twisted in pain even as he hung limp in her arms. She did not have time to think about what this meant. She did not have time to question why an alien had been falling through the same air as her, on the same trajectory. All she knew was that she now had two bodies falling toward the planet, and her fuel was burning away faster than she had planned. She adjusted her calculations quickly. She had enough fuel to reach the forest outside New Seoul if she pushed hard. She could not land safely at the military emergency pods anymore. Instead, she would have to land in the wildlands beyond the colony, where no one would find her immediately. Hana held the unconscious alien tighter and began to angle her descent toward the forest. Behind her, the station was becoming a distant light in the darkness. Ahead of her, the planet grew larger and larger, filling her vision with light and color. She did not know who this alien was, or why he had been falling through the same sky as her. She did not know if he was a threat or a victim. She only knew that she had him now, and that for better or worse, their fates were connected. Hana took a deep breath and pushed her suit's thrusters to their limit. The planet was waiting for her, and somehow, impossibly, she was bringing an enemy with her. The impact with the ground was harder than Hana had planned for. Her suit systems had been designed to slow a fall from orbit, but they were not meant to handle the extra weight of another person, especially when that person was unconscious and could not help distribute the force of impact. Hana felt the breath knocked from her lungs as she crashed through the trees of the dense forest. Branches snapped and broke around her, and the ground came up fast, hitting her hard enough to make everything go dark for a moment. When her vision cleared, Hana found herself lying on her back in a small clearing surrounded by tall trees. The alien was lying a few meters away from her, thrown from her grasp during the impact. For a moment, Hana could not move. Her body was screaming with pain. Her suit had absorbed most of the impact, but some of the force had reached her bones. She lay there breathing hard, taking inventory of her injuries. Nothing was broken, she thought. Nothing was bleeding too badly. She had survived. The alien had not moved since she hit him in the air. Hana pushed herself up on her elbows and looked at him carefully. He was still unconscious, still breathing. She could see the rise and fall of his chest, see the blood that had seeped from a cut on his forehead where she had struck him. He was smaller than she expected an alien soldier to be. His suit was damaged, like hers, and there was a deep wound in his shoulder that looked infected or at least very painful. Hana's first instinct was to call for help. She could use her suit's communication system to alert the military. She could report that she had taken down a Varillian soldier and provide her coordinates for pickup. She would be hailed as a hero. There would be a medal ceremony. Her sister would be proud. But something made her hesitate. The alien looked very much like he needed help. The wound in his shoulder was serious. His breathing was shallow and his suit was failing in several places. If she called for military pickup, the alien would be taken to a military facility. And what happened to him there was not something she wanted to think about. The military would interrogate him, probably torture him, and then probably execute him. Hana knew this because she had been trained in interrogation techniques. She knew because she had studied the history of wars, and she knew how soldiers were treated when they were captured by the enemy. She made a decision that surprised even herself. She would keep the alien hidden for now. She would try to understand what he was, who he was, why he had been falling through the sky above the colony. She would figure this out before she decided what to do about him. Hana dragged the alien to an abandoned mining complex that she remembered from her training flights. The building was old, left over from the early days of the colony when humans had tried to extract minerals from the land. The mining had been abandoned years ago when it became clear that the minerals were not valuable enough to justify the effort. The building still stood, though, hidden in the forest and away from any travel routes. She brought the alien inside and laid him on a flat surface. Then she began to examine him more carefully. His suit was made from materials she did not recognize, but the basic structure was similar to human technology. He wore weapons on his belt, and his hands were shaped like her hands, with 5 fingers each. His face was different from a human face, his skin a shade of pale blue-gray, his eyes larger and set wider apart. His body structure was humanoid, but not human. The wound in his shoulder was the most urgent problem. Hana found a medical kit in the alien's suit and used what she could understand of it to clean the wound and apply what looked like bandages and medicine. The alien did not wake during any of this. She checked his vital signs as best she could and determined that he would probably survive as long as infection did not set in. 3 hours later, Kaz's eyes opened. The first thing he felt was pain. The second thing he felt was fear. He was lying on his back on some kind of hard surface, in a place he did not recognize. The light was coming from a strange angle, filtered through broken windows. The air smelled wrong. And he was alone. Or at least he thought he was alone until he heard the sound of breathing and the click of a weapon being readied. Hana stood over him, pointing a plasma rifle directly at his face. Her hands were steady, her expression determined. She looked like she would shoot him without hesitation if he made any move toward her. Kaz assessed his situation quickly. He was captured. He was wounded. He was in the territory of the people who were supposed to be his enemy. By every rule of the military and by every law of his people, he should be either fighting for his life or accepting his death. Instead, he laughed. The sound surprised Hana so much that she jerked back slightly, her finger moving away from the trigger. The laugh was genuine, shaking Kaz's entire body, causing him to wince with pain each time his shoulder moved. "What is so funny?" Hana demanded, keeping the rifle pointed at him. Kaz stopped laughing and looked up at her with eyes that seemed to hold no hostility, only resignation. "I was trying to run away from my own people," he said. His words came in accented English, but they were clear enough to understand. "And you were trying to run away from your people. We both jumped, we both fell, and we collided in the middle of empty space." He smiled, and it was the smile of someone who saw the absurdity in the universe and found it somehow comforting. "This is, I think, what humans call irony." Hana did not lower the rifle. "You speak our language." "Yes," Kaz said. "I have been studying it for 2 years. I have been talking to humans for even longer. I have been planning to defect for almost 1 year." He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. "I was running when your defenses shot my ship down. I was falling toward your colony to try to contact your people and offer them information that could save their lives." "Why should I believe you?" Hana asked. Kaz looked at the rifle pointing at his face and shrugged as much as his injured shoulder would allow. "You should not. Not based on my words alone. But you already know I am telling the truth, at least in part. If I was a true Virillian soldier, I would have attacked you when I woke. I would have tried to take your weapon and overpower you. Instead, I am lying here, wounded and helpless, talking to you." He met her eyes directly. "You know I am telling the truth because you are intelligent, and intelligent people can sense when other intelligent people are telling the truth." Hana stood there for a long moment, the rifle never wavering. Then slowly, she lowered it. "Tell me everything," she said. "Tell me why you were running, and tell me what information you have, and do not lie to me. If I think you are lying, I will shoot you and let you bleed out." Kaz nodded. "Fair enough," he said, and then he began to talk. Kaz spent the next 3 hours telling Hana everything. He told her about the Virillian military hierarchy and how decisions were made. He told her about the invasion plans that were being finalized at that very moment above the colony. He told her about the command frequencies that the ships used to communicate with each other. He told her about the weaknesses in their tactics, the blind spots in their scanning systems, the range limitations of their most powerful weapons. But most importantly, he told her about the people in his own military who were beginning to question whether this invasion was right. Soldiers like him who had seen the humans, spoken to the humans, and realized that they were fighting against creatures who were not so different from themselves. He told her about the resistance that was growing, slowly, in the ranks of the Virillian forces. "There will be a full invasion in 72 hours, Kaz said, his voice weak but clear. "Not the small attacks you have been experiencing. A full assault with thousands of soldiers and hundreds of ships. Your defenses will not be able to stop this if you do not have warning and if you do not have a strategy that takes advantage of our weaknesses." Hana listened to all of this while keeping her rifle nearby, never fully lowering her guard. But as Kaz talked, she began to believe him. She began to see a pattern in the information he was giving her. Patterns that matched what the military had suspected. The timeline matched reports from scouts. The descriptions of the ships matched the ships that had been spotted during the attacks. But she had a problem. She could not simply walk into the military headquarters and tell them that a Virillian soldier had given her this information. The military command would arrest Kaz immediately. They would interrogate him, probably torture him, and then execute him. Whether or not the information was good, Kaz would not survive the process. And there was another problem, a more personal problem. Hana had begun to see Kaz not as an enemy, but as a person. She had seen his vulnerability. She had heard the truth in his voice. She had recognized in him the same doubt and the same hope that she felt in her own heart. The idea of turning him over to be tortured and killed was becoming impossible. "We need to go to the military command center," Hana said finally. "We need to tell them what you know, but we need to do it in a way that keeps you alive long enough for them to understand how valuable you are." "They will not listen to me," Kaz said. "They will see a Varillian in their headquarters, and they will see an invader." "Then you will not speak," Hana said. "I will speak. You will give me the information, and I will present it. I will tell them that I have interrogated a Varillian prisoner and extracted this intelligence. I will not tell them that you came willingly, that you are helping us of your own choice." Kaz looked at her with something like gratitude in his eyes. "Why would you do this for me? You have no reason to trust me. We are enemies." Hana shook her head slowly. "We might be enemies. Our people might be enemies. But you and I are not enemies. You jumped to escape. I jumped to escape. We both fell. We both chose to survive rather than to kill each other." She stepped closer to him and offered her hand. "Maybe that is the beginning of something different." Kaz took her hand carefully, and she helped him to his feet. He was weak and in pain, but he was alive, and that was more than he had expected when he woke up in the ruins of the mining complex. The journey back to New Seoul took hours. Hana had to hide Kaz inside a supply transport that was heading toward the main colony from the outer settlements. She covered him with cargo and told the driver that she needed a ride back to the city. The driver asked no questions. There were enough strange things happening because of the invasion alert that one more unusual occurrence barely registered. They arrived at the military headquarters after dark. Hana walked in as a cadet who had fought her way down from the station during the attack. She had survived, and she had captured a Varillian soldier during her descent. She had intelligence to share. The guards were skeptical at first, but Hana was known at the headquarters. She was one of the best pilots in the academy, the daughter of a decorated military officer who had died in service. Her word carried weight. She was brought to see Commander Teo, a man in his 50s with a hard face and harder eyes. He had been in the military for 30 years and had fought against aliens on 3 different worlds. He believed in rules and protocols and the proper chain of command. He was not the kind of man who would easily accept extraordinary claims from a young cadet. "I have interrogated a Varillian prisoner," Hana told him, standing at attention in his office. "I have extracted intelligence about the planned invasion. I need to brief you on what I have learned." Commander Teo studied her carefully, then gestured for her to sit and begin. For the next hour, Hana laid out everything that Kaz had told her. She described the invasion plan, the timing, the force composition, the command structure. She described the weaknesses in their tactics and the blind spots in their scanning systems. She described the vulnerabilities in their approach vectors and the ways that human tactical thinking could work against Varillian expectations. The commander listened without interrupting. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair and was silent for a long time. "If this information is accurate," he said slowly, "then we have a chance, a real chance, not to win, but to survive, and perhaps even to push them back." He leaned forward again. "But I need to speak to this prisoner. If you are making this up, if you are passing on disinformation, I need to know. Where is he?" Hana took a breath. This was the moment of truth. "He is hidden in a secure location. Before you see him, I need to tell you something. This Varillian is not a soldier in the sense that we understand soldiers. He is a defector. He came to us willingly because he does not believe in this invasion. There are more like him in the Varillian military, soldiers who are beginning to question the orders they have been given. The commander's expression hardened. You are asking me to treat a Varillian with consideration. You are asking me to spare his life. I am asking you to recognize that he might be more valuable alive than dead, Hana said carefully. He might be able to help us in ways we have not even considered yet. For a moment, the commander looked like he might order her arrested. Then he stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the lights of New Seoul below. Bring me this Varillian, he said finally. But be warned, if he tries anything, if this is some kind of trick, he will die slowly, and so will you for helping him. Hana nodded. She understood the risk she was taking. But as she left the commander's office and went to retrieve Kaz, she felt something that she had not felt since before the alarm sounded on the station. She felt hope. Kaz walked into Commander Teo's office with his hands visible and empty. He was still wounded, still moving slowly, but his eyes were clear and his voice was steady. He knew that he was walking toward either his salvation or his death, and he had made peace with both possibilities before he entered the room. The commander studied him the way a hunter studies an animal it is deciding whether to kill. If you are lying, he said, I will not kill you quickly. I understand, Kaz replied, but I am not lying. Everything I have told the cadet is true. What happened next surprised everyone, perhaps most of all Kaz. Commander Teo asked him a question. Not an accusatory question, not a suspicious question, but a simple request for him to explain the command frequencies and the tactical weaknesses in Varillian procedure. And Kaz answered. He sat in that office, and for the next 3 hours he explained to the commander and the other military officers everything that he had learned in 8 years of Varillian military service. The commander listened carefully. He asked sharp questions. He tested Kaz's knowledge to see if it was consistent, and slowly, grudgingly, he began to believe. By the time the meeting ended, a plan was forming. It was a plan that combined human tactical innovation with Varillian military knowledge. It was a plan that took advantage of every weakness that Kaz could identify in his own people's tactics. It was a desperate plan, but it had a chance of working. The next 60 hours were the most intense of Hana's life. She worked alongside Kaz and the military strategists to prepare the colony's defenses. Hana flew simulation after simulation, learning the new tactics, understanding how to predict Varillian movements based on what Kaz had taught her. The other pilots had no idea what she was doing or why she was pushing so hard, but they followed her example and pushed themselves harder than they ever had before. Kaz, despite his wounds, worked with the weapons specialists and the command staff. He taught them how Varillian ships communicated, what frequencies they used, how they coordinated attacks. But he also did something more. Using the secure communication channels, he began to send messages to Varillian soldiers that he had known, soldiers that he had trained with, soldiers who, like him, had begun to question whether this invasion was right. His message was simple. The humans are stronger than you think. The humans are more clever than you have been told. The humans have defectors from within your own military. You do not have to fight this war. He did not know if his messages would reach anyone. He did not know if anyone would listen. But he sent them anyway. When the Varillian fleet finally arrived, it found a colony that was not broken and helpless, but ready and waiting. The human starfighters, guided by pilots who understood Varillian tactics in ways they had never understood them before, moved with purpose and precision. They did not meet the invasion with overwhelming force because they did not have overwhelming force. Instead, they met it with perfect timing and perfect positioning. A Varillian ship would appear, expecting to find a weak point in the defenses. Instead, it would find 3 human fighters waiting exactly where the Virillian commanders expected them to be, not there. A Virillian assault would begin, following the tactical pattern that had worked so many times before. But this time, the human defenders would adjust their strategy at the exact moment when the Virillian assault was most vulnerable, striking back with a ferocity that seemed to come from nowhere. Hana flew her fighter with a grace that surprised even herself. She understood for the first time what it meant to be not just a good pilot, but an exceptional pilot. She understood how to think like a Virillian, how to anticipate their moves, how to prepare her counterattacks before the initial attack had even finished. With Kaz's knowledge and her own intuition, she became something more than just a soldier. She became an artist of combat. But the most important moment came not from a human pilot, but from Kaz's message. Throughout the colony, on secured military channels and on open frequencies, Kaz's voice was suddenly broadcast to every Virillian ship in the system. He spoke in the military language of the Virillians, using words and phrases that he had heard 1,000 times in training and in combat. He told the truth about what was happening, about why he had defected, about what he had seen when he looked at human soldiers and human families, and understood that they were not so different from his own people. He told them that they did not have to fight this war. Some ships ignored his message. Some commanders ordered their crews to cut off the transmission. But some soldiers in some ships began to think. They began to talk to each other about what they had been told and what they had actually seen. They began to ask if the invasion was right, and slowly, subtly, some of the Virillian attack patterns began to fall apart. Ships that should have moved to support other ships did not move. Attacks that should have been coordinated were delayed. Some fighters, in the moment of truth, refused to fire on human targets. Other Virillian soldiers, seeing this hesitation in their own people, began to hesitate as well. It was not a massive rebellion. It was not an army turning against its commanders. But it was enough. It was enough to break the momentum of the invasion. It was enough to turn what should have been a catastrophic defeat into something like a stalemate, and then into something like a human victory. After 72 hours of continuous combat, the Virillian fleet began to withdraw. The ships that left the colony were fewer than the ships that had arrived. Behind them came news of conflict within the Virillian military itself, of arguments between commanders who believed in the invasion and soldiers who had come to doubt. The unified force that had seemed so overwhelming when it arrived was now fractured and uncertain. Hana, floating in her fighter above New Seoul, watched the Virillian ships leave. She was exhausted beyond measure. Her body hurt. Her mind felt like it had been turned inside out. But as she watched the ships disappear, she felt something that she had thought was impossible. She felt hope. She felt like maybe, just maybe, there was a future worth living for. And somewhere below, in the safety of the command center, Kaz was watching the same sight and feeling the same hope, and understanding that the greatest victory was not the military one. The greatest victory was knowing that his own people, some of them, could question their orders and think for themselves. The greatest victory was knowing that across the boundary between species, understanding was possible.